So hi guys, welcome back. Ponderings from Palm Coast. I'm Mark Webb, and today I think we're going to have a special conversation about some of the exciting things that are happening here in Palm Coast. And I'm lucky enough to have my producer come from behind the camera, Al Ritondo, to share and to talk about some experiences and things that are happening right here in our city and also nationally.
All right.
So today is Monday, the 16th, I believe.
15th.
The what? The
Yep.
16th. And
Time's flying.
oh my God, can
It's
you
hard to
believe
keep track.
June already?
Every
huh?
day is
90 and rainy.
and explosions and
Oh my God, it's just
horrible news every day.
you can't keep up with it. But today
Liberty.
I want you
What do you think? What's your statement?
to ponder and consider some of the things that we're talking about. And I know that I have a pretty
Enjoy.
specific group of people that enjoy and listen to my podcast and the other one, Americans for
Conversations
Conversation
in
with
American
American, and they're very local driven, but we talk about national subjects. But today, I think Al and I want to really talk about and recap what went on this weekend with the rallies here in Palm Coast and throughout,
the nation.
the whole nation. And I know we were both at the old Kings, Palm Coast location, which, I mean, I've never seen so many people and a variety of people.
We tried counting it.
Oh.
It's difficult to count large groups of people, but our co-member Joe Giordano made an attempt. He counted a small group of people and then said, okay, now let's take that and multiply it, and if the crowd gets a little thicker, then you reduce the size visually, and so it was a real what would you call it, guesstimate, but we were thinking 500-600 people.
At least.
The most we've ever seen on that corner,
And
have ever been on that corner.
Exactly. And it was hot, and we had a couple of emergency events, but hands down, it was peaceful. It was organized. The sheriff's department was there in support. I never saw any issues or anything that happened. People were respectful. The positive feeling I got from most of the people that were driving by were thumbs up and congratulations. And yes, free speech was practiced. And there were people that were confused, didn't understand even what No Kings meant. A message that maybe we'll touch on today. But the signs were so awesome and
Yeah, all those
creative.
handmade
And
signs, yeah.
I mean, there wasn't one.
And people were just joyous. They were happy to be together, and you could just feel it in the air. There was no sense of violence whatsoever. People were smiling, happy, joking. There's strength in numbers, and our numbers are growing, so it's feeling better and better.
Well, and the variety of the issues that the signs had, and how so many concerns that the public has, was amazing to me. And I was just so impressed how educated and how aware the citizens are about things that are happening. Because I do have a concern that there is a committed effort by some news outlets, some local radio stations, to affect how the message comes out and to promote mis and disinformation. And I saw a comment on Flagler Live where some lady was convinced that there were more Trump supporters down at Old King's than there were no King supporters. And
You're
yet some,
kidding me.
and yet
There
some,
were like maybe
like
5 or 6 on the other corner.
a
That was
picture
it.
after her post where somebody had actually posted the 5 on that street corner to the hundreds. But it's about perception,
Yeah.
right? And that's really the battle we face, right? Is about the understanding of why we were really there. So, Al, why were you there?
We need to begin opposing this authoritarian approach to our society. It's not the way to do it. There's elements of a conservative swing that we might need to be analyzing. But this kind of approach, this massive approach without any transparency whatsoever, I mean, if some of what Trump has done could have been done with transparency and much slower pace, I think a lot more people would be going, okay, that's always needed to be, that department is always, you know, I mean, I remember stories of the $100 screwdriver, the $1,000 hammer. We as citizens were paying with our tax dollars $1,000 for a hammer. Ridiculous. So those kinds of things need to be cleaned up. Absolutely. The approach and the way it's been done has frightened people to no end. You do not frighten people when you implement changes. You're clear, you're transparent, and you do it with the least amount of turmoil. But he's creating turmoil left and right, and it's just not right.
I found it so odd that the news media, right side news media, including even our local radio stations, were questioning our motivation to be there to defend and support criminal, undocumented immigrants. So they were taking one element of an effort he's trying to do, and for the record, I believe we both agree, a criminal is a criminal, a criminal. If you violate the law, like our president did and was convicted, I am in support of you being processed, i.e. due process. I don't care where you came from, what you do. It's not a political thing. If someone breaks the law, they need to be held accountable. That's not a Republican or Democratic thing. And that is not why we were there. We're not trying to defend illegal aliens who have broke the law. But that's how they tried to label us.
Sure.
And they tried to paint us with this big picture.
And as we were leaving, you know, we did it for between 11 and 12. A lot of us got there a little bit early because we were anxious to get started. But most of us stayed till close to 11. As we're leaving, the 5 or 6 group across with a megaphone was saying, "Oh, you're leaving early? You're not going to get paid if you leave early. You're supposed to, you know, protest till 12." Accusing us. It was the funniest thing. And we're all looking at each other. No one there is paid.
Oh, no.
We all know each other. We're all. It was just the misinformation and the just the lies are a constant with these people.
Well, and I think they're being told and being convinced if they go to a source of news that they are confident in. It could be their neighbor next door. It could be Fox, whatever it is. They believe that to be true. And it's ironic that there were way more news stories talking about the compensation of conservatives going to the parade on Saturday, filling bleachers. And you and I had talked about some of the things that people were seeing and talking about on Craigslist. And then they turn around and try to blame us. And there is a science about doing just that. Blame others of those things that you plan on doing. It's in preparation. But
Oh, Trump does it all the time.
right.
He'll accuse somebody of doing something that he does himself.
Right. But it is also really important to acknowledge that LA and the issues there and the interaction between the protesters and law enforcement and others, and you and I both are not in any way supporting violence, destruction. We just demonstrated our rally can be peaceful and still get the same message. But I also find, go ahead.
Almost all the protests throughout the country were peaceful.
Very.
In fact, even in LA, it was quite evident when you saw the video that the police and the quote-unquote authorities were instigating, were trying to get peaceful protesters to get angry.
Right.
And it didn't amount to anything. And in fact, because the troops were staying in town for, I believe, an additional day or two, they were just on corners hanging out. These are the army guys eating snacks and just chilling because they had nothing to do.
Our country was not founded or became a country via peaceful protest. Concord, the fighting of the militiamen, every one of the people that signed our declaration were under threat, and many of them, after they signed it, were captured and hung. Peace is good, peace is value, peace is where we need to be.
Peace is not free.
Freedom is not free. So when we say no king, we're talking about the reactions and the actions of a president who has made and taken steps that even the Supreme Court has ruled is above and beyond his guidelines. By taking over the California National Guard and ordering them in when the governor, who by the California Constitution is the only one that has the power to do that, is the act of a king. And I had this conversation recently with someone who was very confused and didn't understand what this fear of being a king is. For them, he's doing everything possible to commit to the promises that he's made to the people that have elected him. Security by force, right? This parade he had on Saturday, he's been planning it since his first term. It was something that he's always seen and wanted to do. The actions that he's trying to do. I mean, if you think about it, his own districts that voted for him, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, even here in Florida, congressmen and women had gone to him and pleaded with him to leave the undocumented workers alone in their area because they support our food process. They run our butcher shops. They're out there cleaning your hotels and service work. And just recently, this weekend, he acknowledged that he's going to direct ICE to not primarily go after those areas.
Right, and that was a directive he put in place midnight Friday night,
Right.
the day before the No Kings rally.
But why? Why would he do that?
He was
Because
approached by his
own base.
agricultural secretary. Her
Yeah.
name escapes me, but
Brooks,
appointed by
I
him.
believe.
But still,
Yeah.
she has been inundated by not only farmers but farmer associations. They're all complaining to her that the employees are not coming into work. They're scared
Right.
to go into the fields because ICE is coming and grabbing people
Well, it was
randomly.
They are. And it was like I was sharing with another group the violation. I hear this all the time. Well, they broke the law. They came into the country illegally. They did. But it's a civil violation. It isn't criminal. It's only criminal if you're deported and you come back in. So you take a young woman with her family and she wants to come into this country. She's walked 800 miles from somewhere in South America with kids in her arms. She gets across the border.
Could you imagine?
20 years ago, and for 20 years, she raises those kids with no benefits. She's working in the fields and gets a job, finds a place to live, never violates the law, because to do that would bring down immigration on you. There is no bigger motivation than that. Successfully lives here, and the law she violated, the civil law she violated, has no statute of limitations. Think about that a minute. No statute of limitations. Did you know here in Florida, a doctor can kill you? Malpractice civil lawsuit has a 2-year statute of limitations. That means if we don't prosecute them, we don't go after them, we don't punish them, he's free. He can't be gone after. Does that make sense to you? It doesn't make sense to me. We should have activated and given them rights to be citizens based on their hard work, years of being here without being in trouble. And I was joking with somebody the other day. I says, I don't know who the next president's going to be. I can only pray that it's a Democrat and we have a landslide of House and Senate to the point where we can do everything we did. Kind of like in 2018 when we took the House back. And the very first thing that president does is does an EO, executive order, that gives citizenship to everyone that's been here 10 years or longer and never violated the law. That means they can vote. That means they're now citizens. They don't have to hide. They can generate benefits. What do you think the conservative Republicans would do? Would they be as upset as we are about all the 290 some, I'm guessing, EOs that Trump has done? From changing the Gulf's name to all the other stupid things? I said this to a Republican friend of mine. I want to thank you, to him. I want to thank the Republicans for taking the Democrats to school and teaching us how big this road is, how there's no guardrails, and they have now taught us, Democrats, of how we could act in power. Could you imagine? The second one he could do. National health care for everyone. Totally rephrase health care, single payer, Medicare for everyone on an EO. Did you know that our Medicare program that we have today and Social Security that we have today started
As an EO?
as an EO
No.
back in the 50s? It was an idea after we had the crash that we came and did that. So some good ideas last. So Al, where do you think we're going? What do you think's happening over the next year or so?
Well, people are going to get more and more informed, and hopefully opposition grows. But I wanted to share something that I've been thinking about a while, and what really irks me more than anything is the hatred that's been built up in the GOP through their news medias about being progressive, being liberal, being open-minded, being even kind and considerate, woke.
Which I don't think anybody can define what that is anymore.
It was several people I've heard this from, but most recently from Frank Lutz, who kind of verbalized the hatred that they have that's been instilled in them for years now. That liberals and libtards are soft. Kindness is weakness. They've been taught to hate weakness.
Empathy, right? Lack
Well,
of
empathy falls under weakness.
Yeah, exactly.
It could be considered a softer trait in a human being. So, and that gets automatically shoved into weak. Kindness, empathy, consideration, all those things are now considered weak, and the GOP has been taught to hate them. And they, without realizing that we need both conservatism and liberalism. Those two things need to coexist in each one of us. If you correlate it to a car does not move forward properly without the gas and the brake. Mm-hmm. Assuming the gas is like liberalism, freer thought, open forum of ideas, that has always traditionally been the liberal philosophy. And I believe there's only two political philosophies in this world. You're either conservative or you're liberal. Those are the two political philosophies. There aren't any other types of political philosophies. Whether you're a socialist or a communist or a capitalist, there's still conservatism in those arenas and liberalism. The car does not move forward without the gas and the brake, as I said. Liberalism is the freedom of ideas. Conservatism is the check on those ideas, the control of those ideas. So let's give it some life. Liberalism comes up with ideas. Some are good, some are crazy. Conservatism's job is to look at those ideas and say, that's a crazy idea. No, that's a crazy idea. No, that's not such a bad idea. Maybe we should try implementing that, but let's do it slowly. That's applying conservatism to that idea. Let's go back to eating a hamburger. Are you conservative with your ketchup, or are you liberal with your ketchup? You see, we can apply conservatism and liberalism to many things in our lives. And in politics, those are the two political philosophies. Each needs to exist for there to be movement forward. We cannot have ideas just implemented, like it's happening now, without some conservative approach to it, some restraint, some organization to how you would implement a new idea. Again, liberalism, conservatism. Those two political philosophies need to exist in each one of us. But the GOP has been taught to hate liberalism. Well, you're just killing the engine, if you will, the ideas, the future ideas. Are we to expect conservatives to come up with all these ideas? No, because they're not liberal. They need to free themselves of some conservative restraints in order to generate some new ideas. So you need those two ideas floating at all times, and they need to coexist in each one of us. And that's hard to do. And people have, for quite a number of years now, have gone into their separate corners. They said, you know what, I'm mostly conservative, so that's what I'm going to be. And they went into that corner. And liberals said, well, I'm always going to be liberal, so I'm going to go in that corner and not speak to each other and not talk to each other and not help each other come to solutions. We're at a standstill in this, as our society right now, because we've got one side hating the other.
Yeah.
I mean, liberals do not hate conservatives. They hate them in the sense that they've been an opposition party and all this negativity that's happening. But liberals inherently do not hate conservatives. They appreciate the restraint they might offer some crazy ideas. But again, we've gotten so off track.
Well, and I think that unfortunately the labels that we use today have been hijacked, have been misinterpreted, and I think have been used by nefarious groups in the shadows that have their own agenda. Project 2025. That's a great example of the agenda of a very small group of Christian nationalism motivated people that believe in a view of what our country should be, God-fearing, God-supporting, family nucleus, and how they are. It's ironic that no liberal would ever stop that family from living the way they want. And it always blows me away when people are going door to door to try to tell you how to live, but yet I don't know of a single liberal group in this country that would go stand in front of a Christian church and protest that they are teaching something they don't agree with. This says we all have the right to believe in what we want. That's the agreement. Separation of church and state. Yet you have a group of people who have, by their own design, manufactured an issue that isn't really an issue to change the world around them when no one's trying to change their world. And I agree with you totally, and I loved your car scenario, because a speed limit on the highway is a conservative action to limit a car that can do 120 miles an hour. It says so right there on my speedometer, but I doubt I would ever go that fast, because it makes sense to have rules, laws, restrictions, and things that we do to protect each other. That's a conservative view. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, is it a conservative view to go to a woman and say, we're going to tell you how you're going to live and how you're going to take care of your body? It's not. People don't realize, and I was hearing this the other day, and 60 Minutes just did something. Roe versus Wade. So you do realize that abortions were and have always had some level of restriction that we as a country had agreed to, that beyond so many weeks you couldn't get an abortion. And we were all happy with that until they weren't. And they wanted it changed. In some places it's 0. So that's a great example of what I think you're trying to say, where the breakdown and the agreement and the understanding of how the conservative and liberal views should work together to go abortions are bad, but not after 20 weeks or 26 weeks, because medically there's so much healthcare and things that we can do for a lady or for a healthcare. But it was never free for all to do abortions up until the last minute. So that's a good example. But you talk about hate, and it upsets me, and it shouldn't, when a conservative paints me as a liberal that hates.
Yeah.
We are the least hating
Hateful.
group out there.
Absolutely.
If you're gay,
But
we
again,
love you.
That's
If
the
you're
That's the Trump MO, is to lie about you, say the opposite of what you are, because that's what they are.
But it is true. I do not hate Donald Trump. I do not hate conservatives. I do not like the restrictions and the direction that they're going for fear of what this book, Pocket Constitution, everybody should have one. Get them while you can, while they're still in effect.
Everybody is somewhat liberal and somewhat conservative.
Absolutely.
I mentioned the hamburger example, but it's with
Well, I'm more of a
everything.
mustard guy anyway.
Okay, well, and you were born in the South, so you're comfortable more with mustard. On
And
the
regional is a whole
hamburger. I'm from the
different-
North, and we would give the hamburger back if it had mustard on it. But
And I don't hate you for that.
I'm conservative in some ways,
Yes, you are.
physically conservative. We've heard that term over and over again. Yeah, I'm physically conservative. I don't go around wasting money.
Oh, you're talking about from a financial standpoint.
Well, most people will consider themselves financially conservative but socially liberal. That's what your typical, I don't know, progressive person would say. I'm sure conservatives in some respects are liberal in some of their facets of their lives. We each have to constantly balance a liberal approach to something or a conservative approach to something, and it lives in all of us. And we need to accept, both sides need to accept each other.
Exactly.
We are not going to move forward an inch unless we, both sides, respect each other, respect their absolute necessity for existence.
I agree.
And that would quell all this hate. It's such a misguided hate.
I think so. I think it's manufactured. I do believe that if you look at history, and I'm watching something on Netflix now called Turning Point, and it talks about the atomic bomb, but it really talks about Russia and Ukraine, and it was pointing out how the dictators came about, and in every single case, they came into power because they were able to manipulate and cause fear through the public of one thing or another. Fear of America, fear of the Jews, fear of the Native Americans. It was always a group, fear of the undocumented workers that are here doing work that none of us want to do. And it motivates people. It scares people. They think that some undocumented immigrant's going to come knock on your door. And yet we just saw this weekend the murder of 2 people and the shooting of 2 more by one man, who, by the way, is not in any way undocumented guy. So how we get back?
The killing of a senator and his wife has got to be the straw that broke the camel's back. This is enough. We're now, there's now death happening because of this. And where's the outrage? Where is the outrage? This has got to stop. Got to stop.
Well, my wife was showing me that on Marjorie Taylor Greene's Facebook page or whatever, that night after the shooting was announced, it showed a picture of her with a .50 caliber rifle shooting at a gun range. You know, violent begets violence. And it's like a house of cards. And no one wants the house of cards to collapse. But if it does, and it has, we're in the South, there's still people walking around here now believe that they won the Civil War, and they still feel passionate about that. But that's not the direction we want to go. That's not how the elections that we need to have. And I wanted to touch on freedom of speech. Over the weekend, a gentleman had posted on Facebook, I think he was in Miami, somewhere in Florida, that he was tired of wasting gas because he was driving around looking for protesters to run over. Someone submitted that post to law enforcement in the area, and they found him and arrested him for making threatening actions online on Facebook. And then the comments started all over the news of, hey, that's freedom of speech. He can say and do whatever he wants, and all of that. And I was like, that is not what freedom of speech is. That is not what it's intended to do. And you know, and I've said this all along, you guys know who I am. I don't hide it when I go to City Hall. They require you to stand there and say your name and Palm Coast, or basically where you are. It's a public record. There's no being anonymous in what you say or how you say it. And yet our entire world of social media, whether it's Facebook pages, Flagler Live, are people making these insane comments, these non-truthful mis- and disinformation that they've heard from Fox News, or they've heard from some TikToker, and then they hide behind some anonymous name of, Disneyland Dad, Palm Coast, or something. What are you afraid of? Are you a chicken? Use your real name. Stand up, because that's what it's going to take.
Yeah.
There are people asking me, are you scared? Are you worried that being public? Of course. Does that stop me? Will it stop you, Al?
No.
And that's the difference. That's every elected official, Republican or Democrat, becomes public. You see their face, you see what they say, whether it's Randy Fine or Josh Wheel or DeSantis, it's public record. They say and who they are. You as a citizen have that same right. You as a citizen have the protection of this book, as long as we still have it.
The Constitution.
As long as we still have it, to speak and say what you want. And you know what? I spent 20 years in the military, and every time I re-enlisted, which was multiple times, I just swear an oath to this book. I figured out the other day, I served under 5 different presidents. Republican, Democrat, didn't matter. Because I was defending this book, not the person. And yet people are hiding behind anonymous nicknames to make comments, and then they think that that's free speech. I don't think so. I think if you really believe what you say, if you really believe what you feel, then be proud, stand up, say who you are, say where you are, and own it. Because that's what's going to happen when we come down to it, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah.
So I do totally agree. I am centralist. I have a little bit of everything in me. A lot of
We need
people
to have a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Did you know
you
that?
want to be well-rounded.
Did you know that when
Do
you
you do Do, yeah.
Did you know that when you're in law enforcement, or you take a political action, or you join the military, you give up some of the rights in this book? You knowingly do. When I was in the military, I could not wear my uniform and say and do public comments in forums. Wasn't allowed. UCMJ did not allow me to represent our military in a political fashion. What was going on Saturday? Why do we think some of those Army guys that were out there, I saw their faces. I saw what was going on with there. I imagine some of them, I'm not promoting wrong or right, but I imagine there were questions asked by leadership of, if you don't want to be here to do this, you don't feel it's right, you don't have to. Because this was after hours, right? This was a function. The other thing I was explaining to my wife, I worked as a manager for the Boeing company in Everett, Washington. And when I was promoted and took a managerial job, I had to sign NDAs and documentation. They clearly said, I represent the Boeing company 24/7. And I had to be aware of my surroundings because, oh my God, the last thing the Boeing company wanted to have Boeing manager in fight at bar due to a political argument. So we do purposely sacrifice our rights by judgment and awareness. But that's not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about is we had a phenomenal rally. It was all over the country. It had nothing to do with the parade and those phenomenal Army and celebrating the 250th birthday. I wonder if they'll do that for the Navy and the Air Force and all the other services.
I served in the reserves. I did ROTC, so I had Army Reserves.
Yeah.
I served in the Army Reserves, and so I know what we were taught how to march. It was really there was no energy in that parade whatsoever. There was no energy in the soldiers that were marching because we were taught how to march.
That's what you saw from the video.
That's what I saw from the video. It rained like crazy, so that certainly quelled the crowds. But the bleachers were so under person.
They were empty.
They were empty.
Yeah.
The lack of enthusiasm was just so evident. It was screaming at you, crazy.
Yeah, being one that served, I saw just as many patriotic people at that No Kings rally.
Oh, sure.
Fighting, talking, sharing, organizing, participating for the well-being of what they feel is going on as those service members marching along Constitution Avenue. That word, patriot, is so battered. It sickened me when I heard that word applied to the January 6th people. And that was not what we had this weekend or anywhere else in the country.
Sure.
And yet, they were all patriots. They were pardoned for beating up police officers. What is wrong with the people of America that can, in their mind, turn off what they see, what they hear, what they know, and then are convinced it's something else? I don't.
There's only one
don't
word
understand.
for it: brainwashing.
Probably
Brainwashing
so.
to think they're right when they are so wrong.
Right. Any little thoughts?
Well, we just have to keep the good fight. Do not give up. Our sentiment is growing day by day, week by week, It's evident, we felt that during the Kamala Harris candidacy and campaign, when we went out and rallied, we thought we were getting good numbers for this ruby red county in Florida. We were getting maybe 150 people, and that was a lot of people. But the turnout now at 500 or 600 people is quadruple the amount of people. So there is quite evident a growing opposition to what's going on. And anybody who's on the fence, you've got to pick a side and get out there and defend that side. We're on the side of compassion and consideration and love for your fellow person and an optimistic view of the future and how we could all work together to get there. That's the Democratic side. That's the progressive side. That's the liberal side. We're not trying to prevent society from moving forward. One side is trying to prevent that. And another thing I've observed is it's sort of like the parties have switched places. It's like the Democrats are now the conservatives. We're the ones screaming and yelling, stop, go slow. Let's do this more thought out. Those are conservative words coming out of one's mouth.
Yeah, you're so right.
And the other side is the crazy liberals that are trying all these crazy new things. That's what liberals do usually, and that's why we need conservatives to hold back those liberals and go, all right, stop, slow down a little, we'll get there. That's how our society works. It's not working right now. We got to get it back to working.
Well, it was like I was
Simple as
looking
that.
at an old, I'm going to say 2010, 2012 Republican platform. And these were the things that they said they were going to work on. And one of the ones that really caught my eye was small government. The conservative Republican Party believed in the empowerment of moving big government out of the way and allowing small government, your city and county and even state, to run themselves. We talked about Roe versus Wade. Well, really what the Supreme Court ruled was not that Roe versus Wade was the law of the entire country, but that each state could make up their own decisions. Small government. Is that what we're seeing today? Is that what Governor DeSantis is doing here in our state when he takes every cycle, passes laws to remove the empowerment of things right here in Palm Coast? I'll give you one example. How about they were talking about short-term rentals, Airbnbs? The state is passing laws restricting how they can be touched by small government. I can't tell you how many times I hear our city council complaining about impact fees, things that they're trying to do, and they can't because the state has passed laws taking that power away from you and me and putting it at the Tallahassee level. So that's just one example of what you're talking about, of things being flipped. And it's amazing that people aren't aware of it because they're very single issue driven. And so they're so focused on that one issue, that one little shiny coin, that little Bitcoin, that little Trump coin, that they don't realize that they're throwing everything away. It's really sad.
Is there anything we should know about coming up this week?
Yeah, so I want to.
So what's coming up this week?
Well, today is Monday, so tomorrow, City Council business meeting, 9 a.m., and they will be doing final readings and first and second readings of various things that are going on, like impact fees. And they're going to do the final reading on the House colors to make a decision. They're also going to fill that remaining code enforcement position. So it's 9 o'clock in the morning. Come and watch, participate. Hopefully they'll have their YouTube channel fixed up. Also on the 25th, next week, Teresa, our vice mayor, Pontieri, is having a town hall meeting
Yep.
at 6 p.m. down at the community center.
Yep.
Now they are asking people to go and sign up, and it takes going through a process where you have to actually get an account with a third-party company called Civic something or other. And I've spoke to Shannon, who's been phenomenal. She helped us with our Citizens Academy, and she has shared with me that it's nothing more than a process or a gate or a door so they know how many people to expect, because the community center has various size. So definitely go.
Yeah.
It'll be a one-on-one. You can stand there and ask your questions and listen. You need to participate. This is such a critical time.
And each one of the council members are going to
Each
have
month are
each
gonna
month
do
are going to
one.
have a town hall.
Right.
So
And
there'll be 4 town halls coming down the pike.
And it's an important time because this is budget time. And this is when the city goes and makes its plan for 2025, 2026. So that's important. And so
Participate. I mean, the people do have the power. The Belvedere fuel tanks were pushed away from this area because of we the people, standing up and also the Bunnell land development project has been staved off. Again, the people speaking their mind. So you have the power. We have the power within us to
exactly.
exact change, but we have to do it together.
Right. So be active, be transparent, please. Don't be afraid to put your name to a comment. Stand up, be heard, be aware. It's no different than you putting a political sign in your yard. All your neighbors are going to drive by and know that you're a Republican, Democrat, whatever. The time to be silent and not participate and sit back is past.
Yep.
Things are happening today, tomorrow, next month, next 2-3 months from now that are going to touch you. They're going to impact you, and you need to be heard. And I believe in my heart that there are a lot of conservatives that don't like the direction of what's happening. It's way beyond what they're worried about.
I mean, do we really have conservatives that really want to conserve our way of life, the way we have lived our lives all these
exactly.
decades?
Right. And the other thing
I mean,
is,
come on, conservatives. Be conservative. This is crazy. The things that Trump is doing is so liberal. Let me tell you, very, very liberal. If liberals have wanted to kind of make these kind of big changes all along, but always being checked and balanced by laws, by conservatives, by judges, gosh, we liberals have wanted to make major changes, but our hands have been tied. So, what can I tell you?
and please verify your news, your information. Never, ever trust one source, because no one else is doing it. No one else is checking. No one else is confirming this, that, and the other. And you hear this insane thing about, oh my God, this guy that was killing these people in Minnesota is a liberal guy that was upset with votes and all of that. It's noise. It's nothing but noise. Verify it, please. I do it within our own group, and I challenge everybody, conservative, Republican, never trust one news outlet. Never trust one source. You got to use your critical thinking. I did a whole podcast
On
earlier,
critical thinking.
months and mo's, about critical thinking. Find it, use it, work with it. So guys,
All right, let me do it.
you do it.
Please subscribe and like
Share.
and share this podcast. Please get the word out. We want more people in Palm Coast to get their additional information. We're trying to help them get additional information so they know their town better.
And leave comments. Don't be afraid to put on there, I like this, I didn't like that, I want to talk about this. I got a seat right here for anybody that's interested in coming and talking. I've invited Republicans and Democrats and conservatives and political, and I'm trying to get people that'll get you to ponder what's going on from Palm Coast. So with that,
I'm off back behind the camera.
behind the camera, Al, thanks for showing us
You bet.
your face and letting you know
All right.
that you do a phenomenal job of editing, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you
So
all for watching.
Thanks again, and we'll catch you next time.